wheel of time turns,
and ages come and pass.
leaving memories that become legend.
Legend fades to myth,
And even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again.
Well, welcome to the next episode of Another Turning.
Today we're going to discuss our predictions for episode 5 of Amazon's Wheel of Time show, titled Blood Calls Blood.
Yeah, and we were just trying to remember where episode 4 would end, and we couldn't quite decide. And I think we're still a little up in the air of where 4 ends and where 5 starts. So
Yeah, well, because if we're assuming, and just to clarify, we're going to continue the trajectory we were already on, because trying to rearrange things with new information is just too chaotic. But
what new information?
we've gotten some stuff about casting confirmations and stuff, and like the episodes they're in seems weird, like the fact that there are Tinkers cast that are going to be in episodes 5 and 6, things like that.
See, where do we get the confirmation that they're in episode 5 and 6? Because trajectory.
So Maria Doyle Kennedy and I can't remember the other guy, Daryl McCormick, had posted pictures when we got a big drop of actors posting pictures with their episode 5 and episode 6 scripts. They were in those sections. They were ones that posted pictures with those scripts. And then recently, Wheel of Time on Twitter confirmed that Daryl McCormick is playing Aram, and Maria Doyle Kennedy is going to be playing Ela, his grandmother. So that's kind of where people are getting it from. There's also stuff about the actor that's playing Fane was only cast in one episode, supposedly. That's more rumor than confirmed. So
all right, so based on that, yes, we're going to continue with our trajectory, but I got to talk about this real quick. If we have Tinkers in episode 5 and 6,
yeah,
the only time we see Tinkers early on is in book 1. They're not in New Spring. They're not in book 2, if I can recall.
No, I don't remember any Tinkers in book 2.
And they're only in the slightly past the middle point-ish by page count, I want to say.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
So if Tinkers are in episode 5 and 6, based off of the books, we're talking episode 5 and 6 being then? That means they would...
If things are progressing in the same timeline in the same way as the show, as the book, it would imply, a lot of people are assuming from this, that it implies season 1 is only book 1. They're like reverting back to that hypothesis. Maybe
I can't remember if we discussed it on recording or not, but I know we have discussed it, that I believe one season for just book 1, 6 episodes at the most.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that. Yeah, that like I could see episode 1 being maybe 6 or book 1 being maybe 6 episodes, but trying to stretch it out to 8, I just don't think there's enough there. I also think for Wheel of Time's success, it's really good to get to that book 2 content, which is where it starts to get out from under the Lord of the Rings classic predictable fantasy umbrella. I really think it's in the interest of the show to get that far.
Again, based on Tinkers, we could say they're covering just New Spring and book 1. So what, the first 2 episodes are not book 1 and it's a bunch of stuff before the start of the books is the only way I could see the episode count lining up with Tinkers in the books.
Yeah.
5 and 6.
I think my personal opinion is, because Rafis said in a in the JordanCon chat that he jumped in, he mentioned something about not wanting to introduce characters early on that just show up for a second and then become important later. And I think maybe that he's keeping the Tinkers around in some way is kind of my theory. I don't know how. I really don't know how he would do that. But my theory is maybe that he's making the Tinkers a little more important early on so that when the Tinker plot lines come up later, that's my guess, but I really don't know.
Well, similar to how we talked about how they could be showing things not from the book for Logain because they want to extend Logain's role. Mm-hmm. So the Tinkers, we see them in book 1 where Perrin meets them.
And not again till
Next
book 4.
time we see them, yes, it's book 4. So, because we're talking about episode 5, at this point, maybe they're just incorporating some what's happening in the rest of the world right now, especially if at the end of episode 4 we're talking about uh possibly it's after they finish up at the Eye of the World. So in episode 5 in book 2 we have that prologue with the Dark Friend, which they could be cast as Arum or somebody else, but they could also fill in as somebody at the Dark Friend Social if they keep that in the show. Also, with doing this prologue, they later books Robert Jordan often uses his prologues in certain sections in the rest of the book to do like this is what's happening in the rest of the world, and he starts it in book 2. So it could be we just finished at the Eye of the World. We know spring is starting. Let's catch up on the Tinkers. Where are the Tinkers right now? What are they doing? So that's
Yeah,
why they're also in those episodes. It's possible.
it could be. I really don't know. I just have no idea what to do with that information. So I think for our purposes, we're just gonna ignore it.
And also my biggest argument for we have to get to book 2, at least the beginning of it, is the title Blood Calls Blood. I
Yeah.
think discussing episode 5, let's start with that.
Yeah. Well,
Like
I
talking about
wonder that this is getting a little like conspiracy theory esque. But in theory, following the pattern we had, the Tinkers would have been in the episode 3 and 4 recording plot block. Would Amazon have picked people from that episode 3-4 recording plot and been like, here, hold this script and take pictures to throw people off?
it's possible. There's so many things it could be. It
Yeah.
could be that because roles such as them that are like only a 1 or 2 episode block, and it's like, hey, rather than paying out $100 each to 100 different people to come in and play extras for a day or whatever, I don't know what the actual thing. Sometimes they'll do it for free, but it's like we heard the one interview, and I think we discussed this, is the one person who's directing episode 5 and 6
Mm,
mentioned a couple of scenes with over 200 people.
yeah.
So
Maybe
they
they
could
just
be
have,
filling in.
yeah, have them show up as
Again,
extras.
I discussed the Dark Friend Social, and first off,
That would
do
be
you even think they're going to keep that in?
I don't know. I kind of, as much as I love it in the books, I kind of hope they cut down on the dark friend and Forsaken point of view stuff in the show.
I could see that.
So as much as I like the dark friend social, I think it would just be weird and out of place in the middle of the season like this. Maybe have it show up somewhere else, like maybe later at the towards the end of the season or in another place. But I just feel like it'd be really weird and out of place at this point in the
Uh,
middle of it.
the only way I could see it of working is actually at the end of episode. If at the end of episode 4 he defeats Baalzamon in the weird dream world, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and then they show everything's happy, he thinks he's won, blah blah blah, that kind of scenario, and then for a couple minutes right before the end credits for the episode, because this is the mid season, is right before the credits or actually start to run the credits and then fade back in to all these Dark Friends meeting, and but an injured Baalzamon walks out to give them their order.
That would be interesting. So as a way of wrapping up episode 4.
Because it would only work at the end of an episode to use it in
Yeah.
that way, I
Well, and
think.
we had talked about in our episode predictions for The Dragon Reborn, we had talked about making it obvious to the viewer that Baalzamon's not dead.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a really interesting way to transition and use
It might
that
be
for
a
your
little
transition.
cheesy.
No, I kind of like it. Especially, I mean, depending some of this. So for me, I'm still so focused on like traditional television media that there's usually like a mid-season
I
hiatus.
know, yeah.
And so like I'm thinking in that way, like that'd be such a dramatic place to go on your like month-long break. But
True.
obviously for this, I don't know if they'd be
Or
doing something like that.
even
But
if it's released weekly, and we've talked about this a lot, the streaming, if it's a one-time drop versus if it's a weekly drop, is those catchy endings aren't as important in a binge episode series. So
yeah, you want a little bit because you want people to watch the next next episode, but you don't need to keep their attention for a week. Yeah, it's very different. But so going from there, we had said in our predictions for the last episode that we thought they would actually get to Faldara in that episode. So do you still feel
Yeah,
that way, or
I think so because I'm starting to lean towards this whole showing the Dark Friends social, the nickname it has, at the end episode 4,
yeah,
which would have to show, I think, because even though he declares that he killed Beelzemon and he's won at the eye of the world, it's still not quite like you don't see the full impact. Seeing the fact that, hey, everybody's celebrating it's spring, a little bit of that at the end of episode 4 in Faldara, I think works nicely.
yeah? I think it works nicely at the start of episode 5 too. That they have, if they do it that way, like end episode 4 at the Eye, and then start episode 5 with them arriving back in Faldara with everybody celebrating. I think would work just as well. But so we'll pick up there. We'll pick up with them back in Faldara. Now, episode 5 is called Blood Calls Blood, which, as you know, and this is officially, we're getting into the Great Hunt spoilers, so if you're not that far, we're officially there. But if you, the Blood Calls Blood is a reference to the prophecy that Fane scrawls on his prison when he escapes. Presumably.
Well, it is referring to a dark prophecy, which is a set of prophecies that the Dark One and Dark Friends have that are very unknown to the good people, very similar to the real world satanic Bible versus the real Bible kind of concept. It's more
Kind of.
it's a very secret thing. They believe that there's, a sacred text that the devil produced in some fictional, or I don't know. I don't know a lot about it, but it definitely screams that. I've seen movies, it's been in media of like the concept that there's like texts from the devil,
Yeah.
and it's a similar
It's
concept.
almost so like the beyond the prophecies of the dragon. Those
Prothean
are
cycle?
yeah, thank you. Those are a series of like foretellings that Aes Sedai have at some point.
Yes.
So presumably the dark prophecy, as it's called, is also that. So it's almost like if you're going to make the real world parallels, the like King James Bible that we have is a compilation of different books written by different prophets, right? There are a
Sure.
lot of other books of the Bible that were never that aren't in that were cut out for whatever reason for agendas.
Yeah.
Almost
Hmm.
like that is almost how I would view it. These are
But
also prophecies that were also foretellings from Aes Sedai, but that didn't get included in the prophecies of the dragon because they're dark or creepy or
their
whatever.
their connotation can too easily be taken to mean the Dark One wins.
Yeah.
Um, and see, this is why I'm very torn. Is there's been the big conversation of like, oh, maybe the titles of episodes are misnomers.
I
Well,
think it would be very clever for Amazon to be like, we're going to pull from this stuff, but I just don't see why they would. Like, it just seems weird for them to be intentionally misleading fans, you know?
they could do that for a lot of the episode titles except for this one. We're talking about Blood Called Blood. The only way I could see it being different is if this is almost like a side story episode and we see much more of the Dark Friends and what they're doing.
I
I'm
don't
only
like that.
thinking about that because, like, we know episode 6, The Flame of Tarvalin.
Yeah. Well, so the two theories I've seen is either like we get this dark prophecy in some other context than the way we got it in the books, which is very easy to do. It doesn't have to be. It could be scrawled by the Trollocs in the ways. It could be, you know. So that's one theory. The other theory is that it's a reference to Matt and Egwene being of the old blood, and it's not actually to the prophecy at all.
No, I'm sorry. Blood calls blood. I'm using the word blood. I'd believe it, but specifically being blood calls blood. The Dark Prophecy in the book uses that line repetitively, like 12 times.
Yeah. Here,
Or
wait.
well, it's blood calls blood, blood.
Let me see if I can find it because it's right here. So the chapter is chapter 7 is Blood Calls Blood.
Yes,
And let me see. Okay.
it's
Here
like
it
the
is. It's been
refrain or chorus.
Daughter of the night, she walks again. The ancient war she yet fights. Her new lover she seeks, who shall serve her and die, yet serve still. Who shall stand against her coming? The shining walls shall kneel. Blood feeds blood, blood calls blood. Blood is, and blood was, and blood shall ever be. The man who channels stands alone. He gives his friends for sacrifice. Two roads before him, one to death beyond dying, one to life eternal. Which will he choose? Which will he choose? What hand shelters, what hand slays? Blood feeds blood, blood calls blood. Blood is, and blood was, and blood shall ever be. Luke came to the mountains of doom. Islam waited in the high passes. The hunt is now begun. The shadows' hounds now course and kill. One did live and one did die, but both are. The time of change has come. Blood feeds blood, blood calls blood. Blood is, and blood was, and blood shall ever be. The watchers wait on Tommen's head. The seed of the hammer burns the ancient tree. Death shall sow and summer burn before the great Lord comes. Death shall reap and bodies fail before the great Lord comes. Again the siege slays ancient wrong before the great Lord comes. Now the great Lord comes, now the great Lord comes. Blood feeds blood, blood calls blood. Blood is, and blood was, and blood shall ever be. Now the great Lord comes.
Yeah. I'm sorry, it doesn't repeat blood calls blood. It's just part of that like
The
refrain chorus.
refrain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just can't imagine the title of this episode referring to anything other than this prophecy.
I agree. I do think, though, it's possible to incorporate this prophecy in another way. It doesn't have to be part of Fane's escape.
True.
He
but
could
again,
mutter it in his madness while Moraine is interrogating him. There's other ways it could be incorporated. So I definitely see that theory.
all right. But the other thing is also with a lot of the other casting confirmations we've gotten, some of the Eyes to Die we've gotten confirmed, everybody talks about taking Logain. They could literally be the entourage with the Amerlin seat,
Well,
and most of
so
them
in
are.
episode 5 and 6, we know we have Lyanna and we know we have Leandrin. So both of
Both.
those are at the beginning of the Great Hunt, when
Yep.
in the entourage to enter Faldara.
Yeah.
But so this is kind of where we know episode 6 is the Flame of Tarvalon, which
Yeah.
we'll talk about later, but I think that's going to be a lot of New Spring flashbacks personally. So
Yep,
I guess
possibly.
so, like, episode 5, what do we think is going to happen? They arrive in Faldara, there's celebration. Where do we think it goes from there?
All right, so remembering the book, celebration, then we get a huge time
Yeah,
skip in
there's
the
a
book.
time jump between the end of book 1 and the start of book 2, but I don't think they're going to do that unless they have some sort of mid-season break, which they totally could do. I don't think they'll do the time jump.
I still think they should. I feel like the episodes will be lined up to feel like it's set up for a mid-season break.
Yeah.
And whether or not they do a break, I think it'll be enough people can understand enough clues to say, like, yeah, time has passed. Not specifics necessarily, but the
They
way
could
people are.
do a bit of a like montage type thing where you have like Moraine training Nynaeve and Egwene. You have some time with Bran training with Lan. You have like Matt
Yeah,
dicing with some people guards, and then like kind of maybe do like seasons changing. I'm thinking like Harry Potter does this in the movies with like the Whomping Willow in book 3 specifically, but like you could do something like that where you have like the flowers bloom and now it's spring.
yeah,
Um,
like definitely show spring is part of it is because when book 2 starts is we know specifically Lan and Rand is who it starts with.
mhm.
And throughout the first few chapters, first dozen chapters or so, we realize that they've built some form of relationship. Like there's a closeness to them. And throughout the whole first book covers like a month or two. There's
I think
how
it's a
long it
little bit
is.
longer, but it's something like 2 months, 3 months.
Well, it's 12 days to Barrelon, another dozen, we'll say, to White Bridge, 2 weeks to Camelin, 3 days to Faldara,
Yeah, so it's like
and
a
a
month,
week to
one
the
to two
Eye of the World
months.
and back. It's only a couple of months, and they weren't all together the whole time. They never talked. The only closeness is a little bit of like Egwene is in love with Moraine because she wants power. Not exactly. I know we've talked about this, but it's my
Um,
joking way
well,
of
I mean, there
saying it.
has been some training. They got some training on the way to Berlon. Um, so there is a little bit of that, but yeah, I think it is important to continue building that relationship, and that's one of the things we had talked about is like, should this be a genuine relationship, or is it Lan attaching himself to Rand on the orders of Moraine, and what's going on there? I also think it'd be a useful time to start to develop a little bit more of Lan and Nynaeve's relationship too, like
Yeah.
some of
Even though
that,
I
because
know,
they're at this like weird avoiding each other thing. So like that awkward like see each other walk different way, and start to
and
develop that.
based on the books, by the time events truly kick off, is she's not going to be around Land. So there needs to be show that yes, there's this avoiding between them, but also they obviously still care. But yeah, I think a small montage type thing, and I don't like using that word because again, it sounds like a cliche, but I
Look,
think
this is
it's
like the fourth
needed.
or fifth montage we've said this show should have. So.
Well, it's the easiest way to do it. And when I say they can do a montage, and no, because I want to save it for later, because I was going to say they can mix it in with showing what's happening in other places with the montage, is
It
because
could. They could
time
have like
progression,
Swan getting Moraine's letter, um, and deciding to set out if they
uh,
wanted.
it
Did
could
we
be.
already talk about Logain getting gentled in one of the earlier episodes?
It's never been shown. We never talked about it being shown, I don't
Because
think.
that could go in this episode if we do it at like the beginning to try to get like time passing. They could show Logain's
I'm
gentling.
I'm starting to lean towards the fact that like episode 5 and 6, like we don't leave Valdara until
I
maybe the end of episode 6.
That's what I
So
think. I don't have my sorry, I'm so used to having my glasses on. I go to like adjust them. Um, yeah, I don't think they're leaving Faldara till episode 6.
so we need a lot of, I don't want to say filler, but we need stuff to slow the episodes down.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
in
one of the things I
showing,
think is going to happen, and this is, I think the Aes Sedai arrive in episode 5, but I think the meeting with the Amyrlin that takes place is going to be in episode 6. So I think they're going to swap like Fane's escape and the meeting with the Amyrlin, so that Fane escapes first and then the Amyrlin meets Rand, personally.
we'll get to later episode, but I think yeah, the first 15 minutes to almost the first half hour of the episode, I think is going to be a lot of
Here's what's
showing
going
what's
on.
happening. We spoilers a little bit here later book, but we hear in a later book that Cam and
Abel Coffin.
Abel Coffin did make a trip to Tarvalin at one point.
Yeah, so they could be setting out on that
So
journey.
we could see them coming to Tarvalin at one point. We can see a lot of the events we hear about in later books. Elaine shows up at the White Tower. We can see her arriving. Logain is showing up at the same point. We can see his trial, his gentling.
Yeah, I actually kind of like that. Have that be the opening. I mean, maybe show like if the boys show up or the Emmons Fielders get to Faldara in this episode, do that at the beginning and then focus on other stuff for like the first like 20 minutes. I like that.
Yeah. And kind of, again, we were in perpetual winter before the Eye of the World events.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to show in the first 4 episodes, maybe not episode 4 as much, but especially the first 3, showing the results of this long winter everywhere. It'll be obvious in the scenery, the way people are acting and reacting. So in episode 5 at the beginning, we start to see how the world has progressed a little bit in the
How it's
first.
spring now. Like
Yeah,
the snow is melting, flowers are blooming. Like that'd be cool. And I think that's easily where you could incorporate the Tinkers in that they're traveling. And we could
exactly.
even show them starting to travel further south towards the two rivers. Um,
Yeah.
and
Um,
I think
and
that'd be cool.
then come back to the scene at the
And
beginning
even,
of book 2 with
yeah,
Lan and Rand on the tower
I think you
practicing.
could also, and I don't think this stuff starts to be seen until book 3. So I am kind of pulling, no, it's got to happen in book 2. Start showing the white cloaks. Now, I don't want the Shan Chan to be seen yet. And I honestly don't think the Shan Chan are going to be visible until season 2. I don't think we're going to see them at all. But you could start
I
having
agree.
some of the stuff with the white cloaks also in this part. where the White Cloaks start talking about there's these people, rumors of these strange people that use Aes Sedai's weapons. This could
Yeah.
also be a little bit in that part where we're trying
Well,
to
that
just see what's going on in the rest of the world. And then, yeah,
that would be part of it because we know Bornhald, his troop of people went
baby
to the
Bornhold.
White Tower with no
Oh,
old
Daddy
man
Bornhold.
Bornhald, Daddy Bornhald goes to the White Tower and he gets called back to receive his orders to go to Terabon.
Yeah, so they could even do that
So
scene or something like that in there, just so we get kind of this start to see there's other stuff going on, and then zoom back into what's going on with Rand and Egwene and them.
yeah, that's why I really feel end of episode 4 we get a little bit of it maybe, and then the beginning of episode 5 we get like let's see what's happening in the rest of the world. The first 4 episodes were very much following our main characters with
Mm-hmm.
little blips.
Little bits of Elaine and Logain maybe, but yeah,
Then episode 5, yeah, it starts off with all of this stuff, the White Cloaks,
I like
um,
that.
the
Yeah, Logain's gentle. I think the things
I
Abel
think the
and Tam setting out, some of the White Cloaks, something with the Tinkers, and then Logain's gentling, I think would be really good to see.
yeah,
And it also then adds that sense of like ominous stuff to the Amerlin seat showing up in Faldara, and it helps increase Rand's panic to see, Logain, who last time we saw him was this proud, person, and then to see him brought down and see how horrific the gentling process really is. And like that
yeah,
kind of adds to that fear Rand feels when we get that.
exactly.
That's cool.
And so about I don't know if we'll make it to the halfway point of the episode, but close to that is when you have Rand and Lan on the tower practicing. I don't think they need to keep in the weird, creepy wind trapping him thing.
I don't know. It starts to hint at the bubbles of evil. And I think if those come out of nowhere later on, it would be weird. So I think doing something there that maybe isn't even acknowledged, just like something weird happened there, might be
Maybe.
useful.
I don't know. Honestly, it being a bubble of evil, I didn't make that connection until rereads, really.
Really.
I mean, I just never thought about it. It seemed too unimportant. So,
Right. I get that.
I don't know. My first time reading the books, I never thought about any of this stuff, so
True.
didn't make connections. They maybe if they want to do that, they can keep it in, but honestly, I think between here and when we get introduced to the term bubble of evil, there aren't any in the books.
I know there's that one, and then there's the ones that take place at the beginning of book 4.
Yeah, so if they're
There's
plan
God. Is there none in between that?
I can't think of anything. So based on that, if they want to keep this in, I think they should show them slightly, unless you include other things that happen in book 2 as bubbles of evil, but it also is Fane. There's a lot of book 2 has a lot of weird stuff in
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah. I mean, because
So
there's that one scene with Rand, but that's unclear if that was a bubble of evil or if that was an intentional trap set by somebody.
I think I can't remember. There's been discussions about it, but so if they're gonna keep the wind on the tower in, and like me and you are agreeing that it's hints at what bubble of evils are, they need to keep doing little things like that throughout this and the next season or so, wherever.
Yeah.
But and then the Amerlin seat shows
Yes.
see her coming. There's the whole argument of you should have been gone for a week ago, and Rand panics. I think the events as the book goes could stay. He tries to leave, finds out he can't,
Mm-hmm.
runs into his.
There's then he tries to hide with Fane, and then
Oh,
Egwene sneaks him into the women's
before
quarters.
that
Yeah.
question, because he goes back to his room and all his clothes are being burnt,
Yeah.
and I think they should keep that scene in. It's a slight little comedy.
Yeah, I think there needs to be something there. I don't know if like it needs to be exactly the same, but I do think the changing of his clothes is kind of an important moment, so it should be included.
Yeah. I don't think it needs to be changed too much. I've heard arguments that the way the books are written, there's a lot of the whole like, oh no, a woman saw me naked kind of concept, and people have
I'm
complained about it.
totally fine with them cutting those out. Although they could totally add a Baldaran bath scene somewhere in here if they
That
wanted.
would be maybe in the montage time period.
Um, yeah, yeah. I don't know about that specifically. The like coming back and naked people see him. I don't know if that specifically needs to be included. But him all pushing his friends away part,
Very important.
it's important, and I hate it.
But I hate it because it makes sense for the story.
As a trope, I hate the whole I need to push my friends away so they're safe thing. It drives me up a wall. Every superhero film ever does it.
But it's so
But
realistic in my mind.
I don't.
It is
I think this
literally,
is
it's the extreme of it's not you, it's me.
I've had guys break up with me over that. It's not good.
But it's
The I'm
if
breaking
it's
up with you for
true,
your protection. I'm breaking up with you because I think I'm bad for you. Like, let me make that
it's
decision for
stupid, I
myself.
know, but it's so true. Like I've not to in books and fiction, fantasy is what is it based on real life? There's a saying or a line or a quote. It mirrors real life or something like
Yeah,
that.
something like that.
But good fiction takes real world stuff and accentuates it, pushes it to the extreme to make it obvious and things. So that is one of those tropes that I don't like it as much as others, but I still can appreciate it for what it is.
No, I definitely think it should be in there. Like, I just hate it. This is like that Rand doing that, not just to Matt and Perrin, but to Loyal, was the start of my hatred for him.
Yes, but then when he encounters Egwene and the way she reacts just shows her competence.
Oh God, it
The re-
shows so much. Like she's
um
just like, yeah, no, we're not doing that.
and I like that. It shows a little bit of characterization of the
The
different people.
drastic difference between how Egwene reacts to that and how Matt reacts to that is just
Yes.
extremes.
Trying to avoid the concept that it's like, oh, women are just smarter than men, which I know it implies, but they're more emotionally intelligent or wise. I don't,
There is
and
a lot
that's
more emotional competency to women, and that's a much deeper societal commentary about how men are told not to feel things, but we don't need to get into that.
how it's women and nature creatures like Loyal. Because he's
Loyal.
upset, but later he just straight up forgives Rand like it's
Yeah, but it
nothing. So
crushes me. Loyal is just like so sad about it.
look,
Crushes me.
whenever I hear about it, I just think of Air Buddy, and at least it's not an animal.
You're
It's
right.
humans he's pushing away. It's so much worse when people push animals away like that.
True. True.
And that's a trope I hate.
Okay, so that needs to be in there. So it's he tries to push them away, tries to escape, and he's told he can't leave.
Yep.
We get some fun racism from Masema. Always good. Uh,
There isn't racism in Wheel of Time. It's culturalism.
I would call it racism. The Aiel are a race.
I know, but there's a okay, if I hate Chinese food, does that make me racist? It's there's I know it's a stupid
I don't think
conversation,
that's the
but like,
same thing.
okay, hating Nazis. If Germany, still during Nazi regime Germany, hating Nazis does not make you racist. If
But it's
Nazis
not hating Nazis, it's hating all Germans because of Nazis.
at that time period, would that be considered wrong in the middle of the war?
I'm not saying the common conception was that it's wrong, but it is. Anyway,
It's a
I feel like we're
cultural
getting a little
issue.
too.
It,
Um,
there, I argue there isn't racism in Wheel of Time. It's culturalism. The hating.
Xenophobia. At the very least, you can call it xenophobia.
Yeah,
All right.
but
Um, so there's that, and then he runs into Egwene. She takes him to
she
the
hides
dungeons
him.
with Fane first.
Yeah, which just goes creepy.
Yeah, but I think it's necessary. I think it's necessary to set that up.
Um, it sets up Egwene going down there, finding out that she's been going down there, and she's probably going to continue going down there.
Mm-hmm.
It also helps to show what the heck is happening with Fane and the people around him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
So
it's
it's
just
an
kind of a nice,
important scene.
yeah. And then
Now,
they go back. That doesn't work because Fane's going nuts. And so they go back and hide in the women's quarters.
now in the books, after this is the Moraine meeting the Amelin.
Yes, I think that's the scene where
The
Moraine,
one
Swan,
podcast I
Farron, Liana.
no, no, not Farron and Liana. Because I was just listening to a podcast you got there. It's the next chapter after that is when Leandrin and Alana, not Alana, who's the green that's there? Or the blue that's there.
I'm not sure. There's a lot
But
of
they
eyes.
they
Most of
knock
the
on
other
her
Aes Sedai
door.
that don't come back.
They knock on Moraine's door and they're like, "Hey, the Amerlin wants to see you. Why do you have your room warded from us?" And that's
Okay.
when Moraine meets with the Amerlin and discusses her plans
Mm-hmm.
and saying she needs healing for Matt. And we find out that they're secretly best friends.
Best friends. Uh
Anaya, that's who it is.
oh, and I think, see, this is the stuff I think almost move this till the next episode and make the next episode focus more on Aes Sedai and all of that.
I agree.
And
So
have this episode skip to like Rand takes a nap or something. Egwene goes down to see Fane, and we could even see Egwene meet up with Matt and be like, "Hey, let's go talk to him." Blah blah blah. Walking
yeah,
down to the dungeons, and then switch back to Rand waking up and everything's chaos.
also following the books is this is around the time where we see Bornhald is in Terabon and he's about to meet up with the questioner who's going to give him his orders. But we already discussed a lot of this information could be done at the beginning of the episodes when we're seeing what's happening around the world.
Yeah, do that either at the beginning of the episode or even later in the season because we kind of get bits and pieces of the White Cloaks throughout book two. So,
Yeah, but this is the section in the book where we first find out about the whole White Cloak situation.
oh,
Is
okay.
right after Moraine's first meeting with the Amerlin.
Yeah, so that would have been at the beginning of
And
the episode, I
then
think.
I think the next chapter or two is when Rand wakes up.
Yeah, he wakes up and everything's in chaos because there's Trollocs in the town. And
So yeah, instead of having, I agree, all that, there's no reason for Moiraine to meet the Amerlin before the Fane situation. Um,
yeah, I think
not
that
like,
could be after. I think that's episode 6 stuff, so we can talk about that. But I think I would move that section to episode 6.
yeah, I think episode 5 should be more so. You don't even need Moiraine in it almost. Like, not exactly, but she should be minor in it. It should be focused on what's happening with everybody else in Faldara.
Yeah.
And then when we get into episode 6 is maybe it's a little bit, you kind of have like a back in time a little bit and see what Moiraine was doing before the attack, possibly,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
then
that
what
would
she
be
was doing
almost an
after.
interesting way to do it is have I think it would be weird depending on where we end episode 5 because I think it would be weird to maybe get timelines that confused. But you could.
I don't think it would be too much because okay, so we see a little bit about maybe after Egwene hides Rand, we can see follow Egwene from there.
That's what
Egwene
I think is, yeah, we follow
goes
Egwene.
to find Perrin, Matt, or whatever, and I think she can't find Perrin in the books or something like that, or
I
whatever it
don't
is.
remember. Or maybe Perrin didn't want to go. I don't know if we ever get an explanation for why it's just her and Matt.
Yeah, but she finds Matt. They go down there, and they get. We can see the start. We can see what happens. Actually, see it happen, sort of thing. Like Fane breaks out and attacks them, and then cut away.
Yeah, I
Just
don't
enough.
hmm. I don't know if I want it that far. I don't know. I'm trying to think from like a storytelling perspective if it's better to not know Fane escapes until Rand panics or
I don't think it makes
which?
that much of a difference, really. And just to break up the point of views, I think it'd be nice to follow it to the point where they're like, hmm, the
No, I
only
get what you're
thing
saying. If they
is
end with Fane, we don't want to see who lets Fane out, though. And I,
we wouldn't, is there's no implication that there was somebody else there when Fane was attacked Matt and Egwene.
but how did he get out of the dun? Oh, because it was the guards that were on him got corrupted. That's what it was.
We it's never confirmed who let Fane out in the
Right, but
books.
like one of the things they talk about when Rand went down there with Egwene was the fact that the guards were acting really weird.
Yeah.
Um, so it
So
could
what we
almost
can
be when
see,
they let like Egwene and Matt in, Fane says something to them and they like unlock it almost trance like or
I
something.
think he's already out of it. But when
Oh, they get down there and he's already out of the cage.
the door, okay, so this, let me set it up. So Egwene and Matt get down there. We know there was a guard change
Yes.
from what we find out from that point of view. The guards are maybe their personalities are maybe not as dark or darker than the ones that we saw when Rand and Egwene went down there, just to show there's a difference. It
Mm-hmm.
depends on if we want to decide if these guards are good or bad, pretty much. So they open it up to the inner cells or whatever, and they close it. And as soon as the door closes behind them, you can just see like the smile in the darkness kind of concept.
Oh, that'd be creepy. You're right. I like that.
And then like let the light kind of come in enough to see it was faint, and just a quick like he goes after them,
Yeah.
and it fades to black. Just a
And
couple of like extra.
right, and if you have something like you see Egwene get knocked out and then you have Rand wake up, I just like those kind of parallels that again are kind of
Yeah.
cheesy. I like cheesy media, but
Same. I agree.
but then you have Rand wake up and I would do basically his whole thing very similar to what it was in the book that he runs out in his underwear or whatever he's wearing through the women's quarters. Everybody panics.
Small clothes
Oh,
is what
sorry,
he's
small
wearing.
clothes.
Um,
Brandishing a sword in the women's quarters. Everybody freaks out. And then him
the
thinking, oh my God, Egwene finding Perrin, I think. And Perrin's the one that tells him that they went down to see Fane. And then,
no, Rand assumes they went down there since Egwene's not in her room with Nynaeve. Nynaeve
yes.
is the one that tells him she went down there
Oh, that's right.
when he
That's right.
wakes up.
Um,
Um, which I think they can
yes.
keep it the same. I think maybe I think him almost running into Perrin on the way there, and they both go down there just to get
Yeah,
Perrin in a
just
little
to
bit
give
more.
Perrin something to do instead of
M-
just sit around angsty. Uh,
Maybe have that addition. There's the whole running into the Fade and Ingtar being like, "I'll take the Fade," and he goes away. Don't really
yeah.
know if we need to keep that in there.
I think it would be neat for him to run into a couple more characters along the way, just so that we see other people fighting. Make it
Yeah,
a little bit more of a fight scene rather than just a mad dash to the dungeons, you know?
well, I agree. There should be like in the background, he turns a corner and there's people fighting some Trollocs, and he's like, "Nope, I'm gonna go the other way." Stuff like that'll work.
Yeah,
The only
yeah.
other things we skipped over is that there's the scene with Leandrin talking to the Lady Amalisa, I think happens
I
before
think
this
that
in the book.
happens later. I'm not sure exactly when that happens in the timeline.
I think it happens before because how Leandrin, the type of power Leandrin uses on Lady Amalisa is the same thing she uses on Rand in the dungeon when she finds him there.
Oh, hmm.
And I distinctly remember her using it on Lady Amalisa beforehand. It's the weird power where she like, it's not compulsion.
It's
It's a
kind of,
weird like,
yeah.
but it's she's with Lady Amalisa before that because
Yeah.
she's asking Lady Amalisa to find out where the boys are.
Yeah, I know that. And like she's the one that like reports that Rand's in. Yeah, I guess it must happen before then.
Yeah, there's a few weird things that happen, not weird, but between Rand being hidden and Rand waking up on the night of the attack, there's quite a bit that happens.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, I don't know if that needs to be in there either. I think that's fine to be moved to episode 6. If you want to
Yeah,
include it at all, like that's one of those ones I'm like, I kind of like it, but I go back and forth on that because on one hand, I sometimes like when the viewer or the reader knows more than the people in it. So
characters, yeah.
like knowing that Leandrin's evil, and then later when Egwene follows her from the viewer perspective, being like, "Oh my God, she's terrible! Don't do that," is sometimes
I've
good.
always
But on
had
the other hand, sometimes it's just as nice for the viewer to be surprised. So
I think if they keep in that scene, it's kind of important because we later find out that all the maids and people are servants are trying to find the boys for Lady Amalisa. They'd almost have to cut that out too if they don't keep in the Leandrin thing.
or they could keep it and we don't know why that is. Or like we see Amalisa talking with Leandrin, but we don't necessarily get Leandrin doing her weird torture thing to Amalisa. So like that's what I'm thinking is that like Amalisa is still working for Leandrin. We just don't know it's like from a nefarious perspective.
Yeah, I agree. If they keep in Leandrin asking Lady Amalisa to do that, they should make it less obvious she's doing something evil. Although my first time reading this, I don't know if I instantly jumped on like, oh my God, Leandrin's evil.
I think I didn't I mean like I totally jumped on her being evil, but I don't think I made the connection later when she was with Egwene
Yeah,
just
yeah.
because maybe I didn't remember her or something like that.
Um,
But I
I
think
just
for TV it's easier when you're seeing the person to remember like I remember that face and I remember her being terrible, you know? I,
I think I thought of her, oh wow, this is a bad person, but I don't think I ever thought of her as evil. Which is a distinction. And I've I've argued about it a little bit on is she breaking the three oaths in what she's doing with both Rand and
well,
Lady
the 3
Amalisa.
oaths don't actually say you can't use compulsion, which is a very
She's
strange thing.
causing pain
But
though,
she is using the one power to cause pain.
but
So,
it's not a weapon. It's very much a fine line thing. I just wish it wasn't so obviously evil because I enjoy the concept that like you have
getting
Aes
around the
Sedai.
3 oaths.
Well,
Yeah.
not just that is like the amount of Aes Sedai. The more Aes Sedai that are coming to approaching that fine line between breaking their oaths and not, will make it much more interesting in future seasons when we learn about Black Aja, because once we learn they're a real thing, it'll be
Yeah.
like, oh wait, did that person lie or did they not lie? Did that person use it as a weapon or did they not use?
Yeah.
It'll make that a lot more
I think
interesting.
that's fun.
So
So anyway, so where exactly should this episode end?
I think because so Rand gets down there.
There's
I would
that scene
almost,
we talk about all the time about the heads dripping blood,
oh
creepy.
yeah, super creepy. This is going to be a nightmare-inducing episode, I think.
One
The
can
end,
only hope.
but yeah, he gets down there, and I think how it ends is okay. So he gets down there, he's looking around, he notices the writing about meeting you on Tom and Head or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
starts scrubbing it off. Leandrin shows up and is like, who are you? Lorraine shows up and says, he's with me. Not
Yeah.
exactly, but
See, I think we should cut before them personally. I think we should have Rand. I mean, the prophecy obviously isn't written in English, it's written in Trolloc tongue. But I think we should see Rand seeing the prophecy and it ends with that. And then we don't get the translation till the next episode. So that the title is still referring to the prophecy, but like in a
I
weird way.
agree that we shouldn't get the prophecy until the next episode. I'm just trying to think of how best to do it. What I was thinking is we have the whole um Leandrin Moraine shows up, he remembers his friends, he goes in, Moraine says they'll be okay. And as he's walking out, we find out that Varen and the other Brown are in there studying all the um writing and
Mm-hmm.
not seeming to care. They're in a bunch of blood and gore. And maybe have them mumbling, and you could just slightly overhear maybe Varen referring to the blood calls blood, blood feeds blood.
Maybe. I
and
just don't think we should get to the Aes Sedai yet. I think it
fade
should be
out from there.
Rand showing up in the dungeon and seeing all this chaos, all the gore, all of that, and him seeing the Trolloc script, and then turning to see I'll see you on Tom and Head and end on that shot, maybe.
Yeah,
I
I think
just think we shouldn't get the Aes Sedai there yet.
true because I'm leaning towards episode 6 being kind of like a quick time jump back to show
I
what
think
Moiraine
showing,
and Leandrin and
yeah,
they Ice what were the Aes Sedai doing when Rand was panicking kind of
yeah,
time.
basically, yeah, and then having episode 6 be very Aes Sedai focused is kind of the way I foresee it.
Yeah. We'll get into that in our next episode, but I definitely think, yeah, I agree. Pretty much end with him seeing it and maybe starting to scrub it off
Yeah,
with the hay.
I will see you on Tom and Head. I don't remember the exact wording.
It's not over between us, Althor. I'll see you again on Tom and Head. Let's see how close am I.
We will meet again on Tom and Head. It is never over, Althor.
Oh, I mixed the lines up, but I got pretty close.
That was pretty
Um,
close.
but yeah, I think that's a good ending point,
Okay.
and I think that's it for what we think episode 5 is going to be about.
Yep. So you guys can follow us on social media. We are on Twitter as at Pod Another, and
Um, yeah, I'm not on very often. I've been really bad. My sister keeps everything in check.
yeah.
You can find us on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. I need to get to uploading them on YouTube. And if you'll notice, if you watch the YouTube video, we're doing this on Zoom, so it'll hopefully make a better video. Um, Also on our YouTube, we have other content that is some might be Wheel of Time related, but most of it's just other reading things we're
Mhm.
doing.
Yeah. It's been Ben needs to update where he's at with his reading this year. I've been uploading general bookish stuff, and then our little brother Nate, on occasion, uploads his thoughts as he reads through the series for the first time.
Also, we have a Discord that we're very new at all this, so it's a Discord and you can talk to us on it. I don't know how it compares to other Discords because they're so crowded I can't keep track of anything.
All
But
right. So that's it for us today, and we will see you the next time the wheel turns.